The funeral bells rang 17 times. Each toll echoed across the frozen courtyard of Winterbourne Castle, a somber count of lives lost to a curse older than memory. Vesper Thorne stood at the back of the gathered mourners, her hands folded over the dark wool of her traveling cloak, watching as they lowered Lady Morgana into the frozen ground. The crowd whispered. They always whispered at these funerals. She was beautiful, wasn't she? The most beautiful of them all. Lasted barely 4 hours, I heard. They say she screamed his name until her voice gave out. Such a waste. Such a terrible waste. Vesper felt nothing, not pity, not fear, not even curiosity about what 4 hours of dying felt like. The hollow mark over her heart had stolen those feelings long ago, leaving only emptiness where emotions should have lived. She was 24 years old, and she could not remember the last time she had felt the simple warmth of joy. At the head of the procession, King Caius Winterbourne stood alone. He was tall, impossibly tall, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of a cursed kingdom. His hair fell past his jaw in waves the color of a raven's wing, and his face might have been carved from marble by an artist who understood both beauty and suffering. But it was his eyes that made Vesper stare. Pale gray, the color of winter storms and frozen lakes, they looked at the coffin with an expression so carefully blank it could only be hiding something unbearable. This was the man who had killed 17 women simply by loving them. This was the man Vesper's father had offered her to next. The priest finished his benediction. The crowd began to disperse. King Caius remained motionless, staring at the fresh grave as snowflakes settled on his black coat like accusations. Vesper watched him for a moment longer, this cursed king who stood alone and even in a crowd, and felt the faintest stirring of something in the emptiness of her chest. Recognition, perhaps, or perhaps just the wind. The Thorne estate sat 3 days' ride from the capital, a sprawling manor house surrounded by winter bare gardens and memories Vesper tried not to touch. She had returned home after the funeral to find her father already making preparations. Lord Aldrich Thorne was a man of 55 years, with silver threading through his dark hair and lines carved deep around his eyes. He had loved his wife once, before magic and fear had twisted that love into something that killed her slowly over 5 years. Now he sat in his study, signing papers with the practiced efficiency of a man who had made a terrible decision and convinced himself it was necessary. Vesper stood in the doorway watching him work. "You will leave in 3 days," he said without looking up. "The king has requested 7 candidates. You will be among them." "Because I am already broken," Vesper said quietly. It was not a question. Aldrich's hand paused over the parchment. For a moment, just a moment, something that might have been pain flickered across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by the cool practicality that had defined him since his wife's death. "Because you have nothing left to lose," he corrected. "The other families send their daughters hoping for glory, for power, for the slim chance their girl might be the one to break the curse. They are fools, but you." He finally looked at her and his eyes were ancient with regret. "You were already lost to me long ago. At least this way your sacrifice will mean something." Vesper absorbed this the way she absorbed everything, with the calm acceptance of someone who had stopped expecting warmth from the world. Her father had sealed her magic when she was 7 years old, had pressed the hollow mark into her chest with a curse master's help, had watched her transform from a bright child who could heal wounded birds with her touch into an empty shell who could barely remember what happiness felt like. He had done it because he loved her, because watching his wife burn from the inside with uncontrolled fire magic had broken something fundamental in him, because he believed that a daughter with no magic was better than a daughter dead from it. He was wrong. But Vesper had learned long ago that love and wisdom did not always walk hand in hand. "I understand," she said. "Vesper." Her name sounded strange in his mouth, like a word he had forgotten how to pronounce. "If you survive, if by some miracle you are the one who breaks this curse." He stopped, unable to finish the thought. "I won't survive," Vesper said simply. "No one does. But I will do my duty to our house." She left him there, surrounded by papers and regrets, and climbed the stairs to her room. Her sister found her at midnight. Rowena Thorne was 30 years old, 6 years Vesper's senior, and carried the weight of those years like stones in her pockets. She was beautiful in the way their mother had been beautiful, with dark hair that caught the light and eyes that still remembered how to feel. She had always been the perfect daughter, the one who smiled at parties and charmed visiting lords, and never showed flames dancing on her fingertips where no one could see. She slipped into Vesper's room without knocking, closed the door quietly behind her, and sat on the edge of the bed where her younger sister was supposed to be sleeping. "You're awake," Rowena said softly. I don't sleep much anymore. Vesper sat up, pulling her knees to her chest. Through the window, the moon painted everything silver and cold. Did Father send you to make sure I wouldn't run? Father doesn't know I'm here. Rowena's hands twisted in her lap, a nervous gesture she had never quite outgrown. Vesper, I need you to know something. I volunteered to go in your place. I told him I should be the one offered to the king. Vesper turned to look at her sister fully for the first time. In the moonlight, she could see the truth of it in Rowena's face. The desperate sincerity that came from guilt held too long. He refused, Vesper guessed. He said, Rowena's voice cracked. He said you were already dead inside, so there was no real loss. But I was the hope of the family, the one who could still make a good marriage, still carry on the bloodline properly. Tears slid down her cheeks. I tried, Vesper. I swear I tried to protect you from this. For a long moment, Vesper said nothing. She studied her sister's face, this woman who had carried the burden of being whole in a family broken by fear and magic, and felt that strange stirring in her chest again. Not quite emotion, not quite nothing, something in between. I know, Vesper said finally. She reached out and took Rowena's hand, squeezed it once. Thank you for trying. I should have tried harder. I should have. Rowena stopped, swallowed hard. There are things about Mother you don't know. Things Father made me promise never to tell you. But if you're going to face this curse, if you're going to walk into that castle and let that king touch you, you need to know. Vesper's heart, hollow though it was, beat faster. What things? Rowena opened her mouth, closed it, looked toward the door as if their father might appear to stop her from speaking. Then she leaned close and whispered 3 words that would change everything. Mother was murdered. Vesper's breath caught. What? I cannot tell you everything now. The walls have ears. And Father? Rowena pulled something from her pocket. A small pendant, warm to the touch, carved in the shape of a bird with outstretched wings. This was Mother's. She told me, before she died, that fire magic runs strongest in the women of our line, that one day someone would need to know the truth. She pressed the pendant into Vesper's palm. When you go to the castle, when you survive that first night, I will come to you. I will tell you everything Father has hidden, about Mother's death, about what you truly are, about the magic he stole from you. What magic? Vesper stared at the pendant. It pulsed with warmth against her skin. Trust the warmth, Rowena whispered, standing. That is what Mother always said. Trust the warmth, and it will guide you home. And Vesper? She paused at the door. Survive, please. Survive long enough for me to tell you the truth. She slipped out as quietly as she had come. Vesper sat alone in the darkness, clutching her mother's pendant, feeling warmth pulse against her hollow mark with each beat of her half-dead heart. 3 words echoed in her mind. Mother was murdered. And suddenly, dying in a cursed king's bed seemed far less frightening than the secrets her own family had kept. The journey to Winterbourne Castle took 3 days. Vesper rode in a carriage with 5 other young women, all dressed in white, the color of sacrifice in the northern kingdoms. They were beautiful, these girls, young and hopeful and terrified in equal measure. They whispered among themselves, making desperate plans about how to survive, how to win the king's heart without triggering his curse, how to be the one who finally broke through. Vesper sat silent in the corner, her hands folded over the place where the hollow mark pressed against her chest beneath layers of fabric. She thought about her sister's whispered words in the darkness. Mother was murdered. The pendant hung around her neck, hidden beneath her dress, pulsing with warmth that seemed impossible for a simple piece of jewelry. Vesper touched it through the fabric and felt something stir in the emptiness. Not quite hope, not quite fear, something new. Curiosity, perhaps, or the faint, sleeping ember of anger. The carriage rolled through gates carved with wolves and winter roses. Winterbourne Castle rose before them, dark and imposing against a sky the color of old bruises. The other girls gasped. One of them started crying. Another whispered a prayer to gods who had not answered the prayers of 17 dead brides before her. Vesper looked at the castle and thought, this is where I will learn the truth. The thought brought no fear, only a strange, cold determination. They were taken to chambers to be prepared. Servants bathed them, perfumed them, dressed them in white gowns that whispered against stone floors as they walked. Vesper stood still while older women fussed over her hair, pinning it back from her face with practiced efficiency. In the mirror, she looked like a bride, or a ghost, or perhaps both at once. You're very calm, my lady, one of the servants said softly. She was old enough to have prepared other brides, old enough to recognize the difference between bravery and resignation. Are you not afraid? No, Vesper said honestly, the servant's hand stilled in her hair. Why not? Because I have nothing left to lose, Vesper thought. Because I am already dead inside. Because whatever curse claims the king's brides cannot touch someone who is already hollow. But she said none of this. Instead, she held the old woman's gaze in the mirror and spoke a truth that surprised even herself. Because I don't believe he wants to kill them. The servant's eyes widened. Then slowly, something that might have been understanding crossed her weathered face. No, she whispered. I don't suppose he does. The great hall of Winterbourne Castle had seen coronations and treaties and celebrations that bards still sang about across 3 kingdoms. Tonight it held a death parade. 7 women stood in a line, each bathed and perfumed and dressed in white. Vesper stood forth from the left, between a girl who wept silently and a woman who held her head high with desperate pride. All around them, nobles gathered to watch, their faces hungry with the kind of fascination that came from witnessing tragedy from a safe distance. The whispers started before the king even entered. She's the plain one. Fourth from the left. Hardly worth dying for. I heard the Thorne family sent her because she's damaged goods. Something wrong with her heart. 17 brides dead. What makes them think the 18th will be any different? Vesper kept her eyes forward, her hands clasped over the place where the hollow mark lay hidden. She had learned long ago that showing fear only invited cruelty, and she had exhausted her capacity for fear years ago, along with everything else. The doors at the far end of the hall crashed open. Every voice died, every breath held. King Caius Winterbourne walked into the hall as if winter itself had decided to wear a crown. He was even more striking up close than he had been at the funeral, tall enough to make grown men look small, shoulders broad enough to carry kingdoms, hair falling past his jaw like dark water, framing a face that was beautiful in the way dangerous things were beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, a mouth carved for both cruelty and kindness. And those eyes, pale gray as winter storms, sweeping across the line of trembling women with an expression of such complete exhaustion that Vesper felt something twist in her chest. This man had killed 17 women. And he was so tired of it. A herald's voice cracked through the silence. Your Majesty, the offerings have been prepared according to your specifications. Caius said nothing. His gaze moved down the line, assessing, dismissing. One by one, the women flinched under his attention. The girl beside Vesper began to shake so badly that guards stepped forward to support her. Still, the king's expression revealed nothing. No interest, no hope, nothing but the cold resignation of a man who had watched 17 women die in his bed and expected nothing different from the 18th. His footsteps echoed against stone as he approached. First woman, he paused for 3 heartbeats, moved on. Second woman, third. The weeping girl beside Vesper nearly collapsed when he stopped before her. Then his footsteps stopped directly in front of Vesper. She did not look up. She stared at the stone floor, at the fine leather of his boots, at the hem of his black formal coat. She felt his attention like a physical weight pressing down on her shoulders, her chest, the hidden mark over her hollow heart. The silence stretched until it screamed. Look at me. His voice was deep, cold, devoid of warmth. But there was something beneath it, something that sounded almost like exhaustion, almost like pleading. Vesper raised her eyes. For a long moment, neither of them moved. His gray gaze searched her face with an intensity that should have terrified her, but Vesper had nothing left to lose. Her heart was already empty. Her family had already discarded her. Death would be a mercy compared to the hollow existence she had been living. Perhaps he saw that. Perhaps he saw the absence where fear should have lived. Something shifted in his expression. Not warmth, but curiosity. And beneath that, something darker. Something that looked almost like recognition. What is your name? He asked quietly. Vesper Thorne, Your Majesty. Vesper. He repeated it as if tasting the word, testing its weight. The evening star. Yes, Your Majesty. And you are not afraid. It was not a question, but Vesper answered anyway. No, Your Majesty. Well, because I have nothing left to take, she thought. Because I am already dead inside. Because whatever curse claims your brides cannot touch someone who is already hollow. But she held his gaze and spoke a different truth, one that surprised even herself. Because I don't believe you want to kill them. The hall gasped. Someone dropped something metal that clattered against stone. Nobles leaned forward in their seats, hungry for drama. Caius's eyes widened, just for a moment, just enough. Then slowly, something that might have been the ghost of a smile touched his lips. It was not a happy expression. It was the smile of a man who had forgotten what kindness looked like and was startled to find it in the eyes of a woman dressed for her own funeral. "This one," he said. The words fell like stones into still water. "I'll take this one." Chaos erupted behind them, nobles talking over each other, the other women being escorted away, some relieved, some disappointed. Lords already making plans, calculating odds, placing new bets. Vesper barely heard it. She was too focused on the way Caius was looking at her, the way his jaw clenched as if he was in pain, the way his hand reached toward her and then stopped, trembling slightly in the air between them. He was afraid to touch her. The deadliest king in 3 centuries was afraid of what would happen when he did. "Come," he said, finally, his hand falling back to his side. "We have arrangements to discuss." The contract signing took place in a room lined with books and winter light. Vesper sat across a heavy oak table from the king, while advisors shuffled papers and spoke in the careful language of men who were facilitating a death and calling it a marriage. At the far end of the table sat her father, Lord Aldrich Thorne, his face carefully blank. He had not looked at her since she entered the room. An elderly advisor cleared his throat and began to read. "The terms are straightforward. Lady Vesper Thorne of a house. Thorne agrees to serve as bride to His Majesty King Caius Winterborn for a period of 1 night. If she survives until dawn, the marriage will be formalized and she will be crowned queen. If she does not survive," the old man's voice faltered, "the usual arrangements will be made." The usual arrangements, such clean words for a funeral. "Are these terms agreeable to you, Lady Vesper?" the advisor asked. Before she could answer, her father spoke. "I must register a concern." Lord Aldrich's voice was steady, practiced. "My daughter carries a mark, a defect of the heart. I would hate for His Majesty to blame House Thorne if she proves too weak to survive the night." Vesper felt the blood drain from her face. He was trying to expose the hollow mark, to reveal the emptiness where her heart should be, to humiliate her one last time before she died. "What mark?" Caius's voice cut through the chamber like a blade of ice. He had been silent until now, sitting with his hands folded on the table, his expression unreadable. But something had changed, his pale eyes fixed on Lord Aldrich with an intensity that made the older man flinch. "Perhaps my daughter should show you herself, Your Majesty, before you commit to this arrangement." Every eye turned to Vesper. Her heart, hollow though it was, managed to pound against her ribs. The mark was shameful, a sign of her brokenness, something she had hidden beneath high collars and careful fabrics for 17 years. "The lady's medical history," Caius said slowly, each word dropping like ice into silence, "is not relevant to this contract. She has agreed to the terms. That is sufficient." "But Your Majesty, I merely thought—" "Do you question my judgment, Lord Thorne?" The temperature in the room plummeted. Frost began to creep along the edges of the windows. Advisors shrank back in their seats. One of them made a small sound that might have been a prayer. Lord Aldrich's face went pale. "Of course not, Your Majesty." "Good." Caius turned to Vesper. For just a moment, his expression softened. There was something in his eyes that looked almost like understanding, as if he knew what it meant to carry a mark that labeled you as less than whole, as if he recognized in her the same exhaustion that lived in him. "Sign the contract, Lady Vesper," he said quietly. Vesper stood on legs that threatened to shake. She crossed to the table, took the offered quill, dipped it in ink. Her hand was steady as she signed her name in the careful script her mother had taught her before magic and curses had stolen everything. Caius signed after her. His signature was sharp and angular, like everything else about him. "It is done," the advisor announced. "May the gods have mercy." No one said on whom. The wedding took place at twilight. Vesper walked alone down the aisle of the castle's cathedral. No father to give her away, no family standing in witness except Rowena, who sat rigidly in the back row, her face pale as parchment, her hands clutched in her lap. The pews were filled with nobles who had come not to celebrate, but to observe, to witness another tragedy, to see if this bride would scream like the last one or go quietly like the one before. Their whispers followed Vesper like ghosts. "She's plain. Not even beautiful enough for a proper funeral. The last one lasted 4 hours. This one looks half dead already. Perhaps that's the strategy. I give here until midnight." Vesper kept her eyes forward, fixed on the altar where Caius waited. He wore black, as he always did, but there was something different in his bearing tonight. A tension in his shoulders, a tightness around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and desperate prayers to gods who had stopped listening generations ago. He did not want to do this, Vesper realized. He was as much a prisoner of this ceremony as she was. The thought should not have brought comfort, but somehow it did. The priest began the rites, his voice trembling slightly. He rushed through the words as if speed might spare him from the weight of what he was sanctifying. Do you, Caius, AlphaKing of Frostvale, take this woman as your bride, your queen, your mate? I do. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled at his sides. And do you, Vesper of House Thorn, take this man as your husband, your king, your mate? Vesper looked at Caius, at this cursed king who had killed 17 women simply by loving them, at this man who stood alone even in a crowded cathedral, at these pale gray eyes that held nothing but exhaustion and resignation, and the faint, desperate hope that maybe, this time it would be different. I do, she said. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you. Wait! The priest's mouth hung open mid-word. The nobles leaned forward. Rowena half rose from her seat. Caius reached into his coat and withdrew something small. Metal glinting in the candlelight. A ring, but not an ordinary one. This ring was forged from silver so pale it looked almost white, set with a stone that seemed to contain captured frost. This was my mother's, Caius said quietly. His eyes never left Vesper's face. She was the last woman to survive a full year as my father's queen before the curse claimed her. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The king never spoke of his mother, never. She made me promise, Caius continued, his voice soft enough that only Vesper could hear, that I would only give this ring to someone who looked at me without fear. Someone who saw the man beneath the monster. He took Vesper's hand. The cold of his touch was shocking, bone deep. The kind of cold that should have stopped her heart on contact. But instead, something strange happened. Where their skin met, warmth bloomed. Caius's breath caught, his eyes widened. He stared at their joined hands as if witnessing a miracle he had stopped believing in. You are warm, he whispered. And you are cold, Vesper replied, but I am still standing. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. And the moment it settled against her skin, the frost within the stone began to swirl, alive and dancing. Then something impossible happened. The frost began to melt. Tiny droplets of water formed on the surface of the stone, catching the candlelight like tears. Caius stared at it, his face a mask of shock and something that might have been hope. This has never happened before, he said. Perhaps, Vesper said softly. I am not like the others. He looked at her then, really looked at her. And for the first time since she had seen him standing at Lady Morgana's funeral, something almost like warmth touched his winter storm eyes. No, he agreed quietly. You are not. To the priest he said, finish it. The priest stammered through the final blessing. The nobles erupted in confused applause. And through it all, Vesper stood with her hand in Caius's, watching water droplets slide down the surface of a ring that had held nothing but frozen tears for 17 years. Either it was a final kindness before her death, or something had changed. She was not sure which possibility frightened her more. The reception was mercifully brief. Nobles approached to offer hollow congratulations, their eyes sliding away from Vesper as if she were already a ghost. Servants moved through the crowd with wine no one drank and food no one touched. Everyone was waiting for night to fall, waiting for the king to claim his bride, waiting for another body to be carried out before dawn. When the clock struck 9, Caius appeared at Vesper's side. Up close, she could see the shadows beneath his eyes, the way his jaw clenched as if he was in constant pain, the careful distance he maintained even when offering his arm. It is time, he said. Vesper set down her untouched glass. I know. She took his arm, felt the cold seep through her sleeve, into her veins, toward the hollow mark beneath her breast. They walked in silence through torchlit corridors, up spiraling stairs toward the chambers where 17 women had died and one would either join them or break a curse that had lasted 3 generations. With each step, the temperature dropped. With each step, Vesper felt the weight of 17 ghosts pressing against her back. At the door to his chambers, Caius stopped. You can still refuse, he said quietly, not looking at her. I can have you escorted to a separate wing. You would live at least until morning. We could annul the marriage. Say you were too weak. Your father would be disappointed, but you would be alive. No. He turned to look at her, surprise flickering across his face. I made a vow, Vesper said. I intend to keep it. Do you understand what you are agreeing to? His voice was rough, desperate. 17 women have died in this room. Some went peacefully, others fought, others begged, none survived. Whatever you think you saw in me during the ceremony, whatever warmth you think you felt, it will not be enough. The curse always wins. Then I will die, Vesper said simply. But I will die at having kept my word. Something flickered across his face. Pain, perhaps, or hope, or both at once. He pushed open the door. The chamber beyond was vast and cold. A massive bed dominated the space, draped in white linens that looked too much like burial shrouds. Frost crept along the window frames, despite the fire roaring in the hearth. The very air seemed to crystallize as they stepped inside. The door closed behind them with a sound like a tomb sealing. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Chaos stood near the door, his hands clenched at his sides, his chest rising and falling with breaths that misted in the frigid air. Vesper remained near the bed, her fingers tracing the edge of his mother's ring, feeling the strange warmth that still pulsed from the melting frost stone. I am sorry, Chaos said finally, his voice breaking on the words. For whatever comes next, for what I am about to do to you, I am sorry. Vesper turned to face him. In the firelight, his features seemed carved from marble, beautiful and remote, and so terribly, achingly lonely. Don't apologize, she said. Not yet. The night is not over. She crossed the space between them, reached up, and for the first time touched his face with her bare hand. The cold was staggering. Her fingers should have frozen on contact, should have turned blue and lifeless against his skin. But instead, that impossible warmth bloomed again. It spread from her palm into his skin, chasing away the frost, bringing color to his pale cheeks. Chaos's eyes widened in shock. His hand came up to cover hers, holding it against his face as if it were something precious and fragile. How? He whispered. I don't know, Vesper admitted, but I am not afraid. You should be. Perhaps. She stood on her toes, bringing her face closer to his. But I have lived hollow for 17 years. If I am to die tonight, at least I will die feeling something. And then, before fear or reason could stop her, Vesper kissed the cursed king. It began with ice. The moment their lips touched, Vesper felt the curse. It was like being plunged into a frozen lake, like having all the warmth sucked from her body in a single, terrible instant. She gasped against his mouth, her hands clutching his shoulders, and felt something pulling at her chest. The curse was trying to drain her, trying to take her warmth, her life force, her very soul. But it found nothing to take. It reached for her heart and found only the hollow mark. It searched for warmth and discovered only the emptiness where 17 years of suppressed emotions had left nothing but void. The curse pulled and pulled, drinking deep, and came away with nothing but absence. Vesper felt the moment the curse realized its mistake. She felt it recoil, confused, searching for something to feed on. And she felt the hollow mark do something it had never done before. It began to absorb the curse instead. The emptiness inside her chest, the void that had taken everything from her for so long, suddenly had a purpose. It drank in the ice, in the cold, in the pulling darkness, swallowing it like a black hole swallowing light. And as it absorbed the curse, something strange and wonderful began to happen. Warmth spread through Vesper's body. Not the warmth of fire or fever, but the warmth of something being filled for the first time. The hollow mark was using the curse's own power to fill the emptiness, transforming cold into heat, death into life, absence into presence. Chaos made a sound against her mouth. Surprise and confusion and something that might have been hope. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and she felt his heart beating fast beneath his chest. They broke apart, both breathing hard. You are still alive, Kaya said, his voice filled with wonder and terror in equal measure. You are still warm. And you, Vesper touched his face again, marveling at the color in his cheeks, are less cold than before. They stared at each other in the firelight, two people who had both given up on miracles, trying to understand what was happening between them. I do not understand this, Kaya said. Neither do I. Vesper smiled and realized it was the first genuine smile she had felt on her face in 17 years. But I am not dead yet. Not yet, he agreed. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb tracing her cheekbone with a gentleness that seemed impossible for a man who killed with his touch. But the night is young. Then we should not waste it being afraid. What followed was unlike anything Vesper had expected. Chaos moved with desperate gentleness, as if she were something precious and breakable. His cold hands mapped her body with reverent care, learning every curve, every response, every place that made her breath catch. When he found the hollow mark over her heart, dark against her pale skin, he froze. What is this? He whispered. Vesper took his hand and pressed it against the mark. A curse from childhood. It emptied me, made me feel nothing, want nothing, love nothing. She had expected disgust, rejection. Instead, Caius pressed his lips to the mark, and Vesper gasped at the sensation. Cold and heat, mingling in ways that should have been impossible. Then we are matched, he murmured against her skin. I am cursed to destroy any warmth I touch. You are cursed to feel none. His breath ghosted over the mark, cold as winter wind but somehow comforting. Perhaps together we cancel each other out. They came together slowly, carefully. Two broken people learning each other in the darkness. His cold seeped into her, but it did not kill. Her emptiness absorbed him, but it did not drain. They lay at the center of a frozen bed, wrapped in each other, and Vesper felt something she had not felt since she was 7 years old. She felt whole. Not happy, not yet, but no longer hollow. The night stretched on. Hours passed, and Vesper remained warm and breathing and alive. She woke to gray light seeping through frosted windows. Dawn light, morning light. She was alive. For a long moment, Vesper simply lay there trying to process this impossible fact. The sheets beneath her were cold, stiff with frost at the edges. Her breath misted in the air, but her heart still beat, slow and steady in her chest. She had survived. Beside her, Caius lay motionless. His dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. His features, so sharp and forbidding when awake, had softened in sleep. He looked younger, vulnerable, almost peaceful. His arm was wrapped around her waist. Even in sleep, he held her as if afraid she might disappear. Vesper studied his face, remembering the night before, remembering everything. The way his hands had trembled against her skin, the way he had whispered apologies between kisses, the way he had held her after, his face buried in her hair, his whole body shaking with something that might have been relief or terror, or both. He had expected her to die, had braced himself for it, had already begun mourning her even as he touched her, and she had lived. Slowly, carefully, Vesper reached up and touched his face. His skin was still cool, but not the bone-deep cold of before. There was warmth beneath the surface now, as if something had thawed in the night. Caius stirred, his eyes opened slowly, unfocused with sleep. Then he saw her. He sat up so fast the bed frame groaned. His hands found her face, cupping it as if she might shatter. Vesper. Her name tore from him like a prayer. You are alive. You are... He could not finish. His whole body shook. And then, to Vesper's amazement, tears began to slide down his face. The cursed king was crying. I survived, Vesper said softly, covering his hands with her own. I am still here. How? The word was barely a whisper. No one survives. No one ever. I do not know, Vesper admitted, but I am here. I am warm. And you? She touched his chest, felt his heart pounding beneath her palm. You are warmer than before. Something broke in Caius's expression then. The mask he wore, the cold king's face that kept the world at bay, crumbled completely. And beneath it, Vesper saw a man who had been alone for so long he had forgotten what hope felt like. He pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her like iron bands. She felt his breath ragged against her hair, felt his heart pounding beneath her ear, felt the wetness of his tears soaking into her shoulder. I was so certain, he whispered brokenly. When I woke, I did not want to look. I was so certain you would be cold beside me, like all the others. I am warm, Vesper said, holding him just as tightly, or at least as warm as I have ever been. A sound escaped him that might have been a laugh or a sob or both at once. They stayed like that for a long time, tangled together in the gray morning light, two people who had both been convinced they were beyond saving, discovering that perhaps they had been wrong. The news spread through the castle like wildfire. The king's 18th bride had survived the night. Servants whispered in corridors. Nobles demanded audiences. Guards stood outside the royal chambers, listening for any sign of distress, and found only silence. Silence and the occasional sound of voices speaking softly to each other, voices that sounded almost like laughter. The kingdom itself seemed to hold its breath. By noon, the entire court knew. By evening, messengers were riding out to spread the word across the land. The curse had been challenged. The curse had been survived. And in the royal chambers, Vesper Thorne sat wrapped in a robe too large for her, watching as her husband, the cursed king, tried to explain to his advisors what had happened without quite understanding it himself. She lived, Caius said simply, his hand never leaving Vesper's. The curse tried to take her, and she lived. For how long? One advisor dared to ask. The others sometimes survived hours, days in rare cases. How do we know this is not simply delayed? Caius's eyes went cold. Then we wait, and we watch, and we hope. When the advisors finally left, Vesper turned to him. They are right to question. We do not know if this is permanent. I know, Caius said quietly. He touched her face, his fingers still cool, but no longer painful. But for the first time in 10 years, I am allowing myself to hope. Is that foolish? Perhaps, Vesper admitted, but I think I am learning to hope as well. And I have been hollow for far longer than you have been cursed. A knock at the door interrupted them. A servant entered, bowing low. Your Majesty, there is a woman here to see the Queen. She says she is her sister, Lady Rowena Thorne. Vesper's heart, which had begun to fill with strange new feelings over the past hours, clenched. Rowena, her sister who had tried to protect her sister who knew the truth about their mother's death. Send her in, Vesper said. Rowena entered slowly, her eyes red from crying, her hands twisting in her skirts. When she saw Vesper alive, sitting there in the morning light, her face crumpled. You are alive, Rowena breathed. Dear gods, you are alive. I am, Vesper said. She stood, crossed to her sister, and took her hands. Thanks to my hollow heart, I think. I need to speak with you, Rowena said urgently. Her eyes flicked to Caius. Alone, if I may. Caius rose. I will give you privacy. But Vesper? He hesitated. I will be just outside if you need me. And the protectiveness in his voice was new, fragile, as if he was still learning how to care for someone without fearing he would destroy them. When they were alone, Rowena pulled Vesper to the window, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. You survived the night, Rowena said, which means I can tell you everything now. Everything Father has kept hidden. Vesper waited, her hand instinctively going to the pendant beneath her dress. Mother did not just have fire magic, Rowena began. She was a healer, one of the most powerful in generations. She could cure any curse, mend any wound, bring warmth to the coldest heart. Her eyes gleamed with tears. Father loved her, truly loved her, but he was afraid of her power, afraid of what people would say if they knew he had married a witch. Vesper's breath caught. So he hired someone, Rowena continued, a curse master, the same one who later created your hollow mark. He paid the man to drain Mother's magic slowly, to make it look like wasting sickness. It took 5 years of watching her burn from the inside, of her screaming at night from the pain, of the magic consuming her as it was forcibly pulled away. Tears slid down Rowena's cheeks. And when you were 7 years old, you brought a dying bird back to life. You held it in your hands, and fire bloomed from your palms, and the bird opened its eyes and flew away healed. Father saw it, and he knew. You had inherited Mother's gift. Vesper felt as if the ground had dropped from beneath her. She had no memory of this. The hollow mark had taken even that from her. He panicked, Rowena said. He could not lose another daughter to magic, could not watch you burn from the inside the way Mother had, could not face the shame of people knowing his bloodline carried witch magic. Her voice broke. So he hired the same curse master, paid him to create the hollow mark, to seal your magic away where it could never emerge. He thought he was protecting you, but he destroyed you instead. Vesper absorbed this. All these years she had thought herself simply broken, defective, less than human. But she had been powerful once, had held the gift of healing fire in her small hands. Why are you telling me this now? Vesper asked. Because, Rowena said, her voice urgent, your magic is not gone, it is only sealed. And if the king's curse is feeding on that seal, if that is why you survived the night, then there may be a way to break both curses. She gripped Vesper's hands tighter. Or it might kill you both trying. Before Vesper could respond, Rowena pulled something from her pocket, a small vial filled with silver liquid. If you ever need to break the seal, Rowena said, Father holds the key, a phoenix feather locked in his study, the same feather Mother gave him before she died. He has kept it all these years, perhaps out of guilt. She pressed the vial into Vesper's hand. And this is from the Hollow Witch, the woman who created your seal. She gave it to me years ago, said one day someone might need it to guide the magic when it breaks free. Vesper stared at the vial. The Hollow Witch? She lives in the northern woods. She told me, when Father took me there as a child, that she regretted what she had done to you. That if the time ever came, this would help channel the fire so it does not consume everything. Rowena kissed Vesper's forehead. Trust the warmth, little sister. That is what Mother always said. Trust the warmth, and it will guide you home. She left. Vesper stood alone in the chamber, clutching the vial, feeling the pendant pulse warmth against her hollow mark with each beat of her half-filled heart. Outside, she could hear Chaos pacing, waiting, worrying. She looked at the vial, then at the door, then at the window, where the first stars were beginning to appear in the winter sky. She had survived one night, but curses were patient things, and magic sealed away for 17 years did not simply disappear. It waited, and Vesper was beginning to suspect that whatever waited inside her hollow chest might be the key to breaking more than just one king's curse. She pressed the pendant against her heart and whispered to the mother she could barely remember, "Help me understand. Help me know what to do." The warmth pulsed once, twice, and in that warmth Vesper felt something she had not felt in 17 years. She felt the distant, sleeping ember of her own magic beginning to wake. The first week passed like a held breath. Vesper woke each morning half expecting to find herself cold and still, another name added to the list of 17 dead brides. But dawn came, and she remained warm, breathing, alive. And each morning she found Caius already awake beside her, watching her with eyes that held equal parts wonder and fear. He was afraid to sleep deeply, she realized, afraid he would wake to find her gone. "I am still here," she would whisper, touching his face. And he would close his eyes and breathe, as if her words were prayers that might keep the curse at bay for one more day. The castle adapted slowly to the miracle in its midst. Servants who had prepared 17 funeral pyres now laid out breakfast for a living queen. Advisors who had written condolence letters now drafted announcements of a successful wedding night. The shift felt unnatural, like trying to celebrate in a graveyard. But Vesper was alive, and that changed everything. On the seventh day, Caius came to her chambers in the afternoon, when winter light slanted through the windows and painted everything silver. He carried a book, leather-bound and ancient, and sat beside her on the window seat without speaking. "What is this?" Vesper asked. "The history of the curse." His fingers traced the worn cover. "I thought you should know what we are fighting against. If we are to understand why you survived, we must understand what killed the others." They read together as snow began to fall outside. The book told the story of Caius's great-grandfather, King Aldrich I, who had loved a fire witch named Seraphine. She had healed his people, cured plagues, brought warmth to the coldest winters. But when she refused to use her magic for war, when she would not burn his enemies, he had her executed for treason. With her dying breath, she cursed his bloodline. Every AlphaKing would know love, but that love would be poison. They would freeze what they touched. They would kill what they cherished. They would die alone, surrounded by the ghosts of those they had destroyed trying to save. 3 generations, Caius said quietly. My great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father, and all killed the women they loved. My mother lasted the longest. 1 full year. She was a fire mage herself, you see, strong enough to fight the curse for a time. He turned the page. There was a portrait there, painted in fading colors. A woman with dark hair and eyes like winter storms. She looked like Caius, Vesper realized. The same sharp cheekbones, the same sad mouth. She died when I was 10, Caius continued. I watched the curse drain her slowly. Watched the fire in her eyes go out. She told me, at the end, that I should never love. That it would be kinder to die alone than to kill someone trying to hold them close. But you kept trying, Vesper said softly. 17 times. His laugh was bitter. 17 times I thought perhaps this one would be different. Perhaps this one would be strong enough. But the curse was always stronger. He looked at her, and his eyes were ancient with grief. Until you. Vesper took his hand. It was still cooler than a normal man's touch, but no longer painful. She laced her fingers through his and felt warmth bloom where their skin met. I am not stronger, she said. I am emptier. The curse cannot feed on what is not there. But you are filling now. Caius pressed his palm over her heart, over the hollow mark hidden beneath her dress. I can feel it. Each day there is more of you than there was before, more warmth, more life. What happens when the emptiness is gone? When there is finally something for the curse to take? It was the question that haunted them both, the fear that lived in the spaces between their words. I do not know, Vesper admitted, but I would rather feel and risk death than live hollow forever. Caius was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned forward and kissed her forehead, gentle as snowfall. Then we will face it together, he said, whatever comes. The second month brought changes. Vesper began to feel things she had forgotten existed. The pleasure of warm bread and honey at breakfast. The satisfaction of finishing a difficult book. The simple contentment of sitting in silence with someone who understood loneliness as well as she did. Small things, quiet things. But to someone who had lived hollow for 17 years, they were miracles. Caius seemed to change too. The permanent tension in his shoulders eased slightly. His rare smiles came more easily. The frost that had constantly crept along the edges of his chambers began to retreat, as if the curse itself was confused by what was happening. They fell into rhythms. Morning walks through the winter gardens, where Caius taught her the names of frozen flowers, and she taught him that beauty could exist even in ice. Afternoon reading in the library, where they sat close enough to touch but not quite touching, as if testing the boundaries of what was safe. Evening meals taken in his chambers, where they talked about everything and nothing until the candles burned low. And nights, long nights where they learned each other slowly, carefully, mapping the geography of two broken people trying to become whole. "Tell me something true," Caius said one night, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. They lay tangled together in the darkness. The fire burned down to embers, frost creeping along the windows in delicate spirals. "I am beginning to remember what happiness feels like," Vesper said, "and it terrifies me." His hand stilled. "Why?" "Because I know what it is like to lose it. My mother used to sing to me. I cannot remember the songs, but I remember the feeling of being safe in her arms. And then she was gone, and the hollow mark took even that memory away." Vesper turned to face him in the darkness. "What if I lose this too? What if I lose you?" "You will not lose me." Caius cupped her face in his cool hands. "I have survived this curse for 28 years. I will not let it take me now." But they both knew he could not promise that. The curse had other plans. The third month brought a truth that would change everything. Vesper had been feeling strange for weeks, a persistent fatigue that made afternoons difficult, a sensitivity to certain smells that sent her from rooms without warning, a tenderness in her breast that she tried to ignore. She told herself it was the strain of adapting to castle life, the weight of being watched constantly, the pressure of being the bride who had survived when 17 had not. But when the nausea came, sharp and undeniable, sending her to her knees one morning before breakfast, she could no longer deny what her body was telling her. The healer confirmed it within the hour. "Your Majesty," the old woman said, her voice filled with wonder and fear in equal measure. "You are with child, perhaps 6 weeks along, perhaps 7. The king's heir grows within you." Vesper sat frozen, her hand moving automatically to her stomach. A child, a baby, a life growing inside her that was half her emptiness and half Caius's curse. "Are you certain?" she whispered. "As certain as I can be at this stage." The healer bowed. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. This is a blessing beyond measure." After the healer left, Vesper sat alone in her chambers, her hand pressed against her belly, feeling for something she could not yet detect. A baby, growing inside her, growing inside the hollow mark that had consumed everything for 17 years. What would that mean? What kind of child could be born from a void and a curse? Would it be hollow like her, frozen like him, or something else entirely? And more frightening still, Rowena's words echoed in her mind. If the baby had magic in its blood, it might be breaking the seal from inside. The sleeping fire might be waking, drawn out by new life. Vesper touched the pendant around her neck. It pulsed warmer than before, as if responding to the life growing beneath her heart. She needed to tell Caius. She waited until evening after dinner, when the fire had burned low and the stars were bright beyond the frosted windows. She had practiced the words a dozen different ways, but when the moment came, she found herself simply taking his hand and placing it on her stomach. "I am carrying your child," she said quietly. Caius went completely still. The glass in his hand frosted over and cracked, wine spilling across the floor in a dark stain. He did not seem to notice. "What?" The word was barely a whisper. The healer confirmed it today. "I am perhaps 2 months along." For a long moment he did not move, did not breathe. Then slowly, carefully, he fell to his knees before her. His hands found her stomach, pressing gently against the fabric of her dress. His head bowed until his forehead rested against her belly. "A child," he breathed. "Our child." Vesper's throat tightened at the wonder in his voice. Her hand came down to rest in his dark hair. "You are pleased?" she asked, though she could already see the answer in the way he trembled. He looked up at her, and his eyes were bright with something she had never seen before. Joy. Pure, unguarded joy. "Pleased?" He laughed, the sound rough from disuse. "Vesper, I never believed I would have an heir. I never believed any woman would survive long enough to conceive. I had accepted that my line would end with me. that the curse would die when I died. His hands shook against her stomach. You have given me something I never dared hope for. Something warm bloomed in Vesper's chest, not the hollow emptiness she had grown accustomed to. Something fuller, something dangerous. She was falling for him. Despite every warning, every logical reason to keep her heart cold, she was falling for this cursed king who knelt before her with tears on his face, marveling at the miracle of new life. Caius, she said softly, I need to tell you something. He rose, cupping her face in his hands. Anything. I am beginning to feel things, real things, not just sensation but emotion. She struggled to find words for feelings she barely recognized. Warmth when you smile at me. Contentment when we sit together. Fear when I think of losing you. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I think I am falling in love with you. The joy drained from Caius's face like water from a broken cup. His hands dropped from her cheeks. He stepped back, his expression twisting with something that looked like anguish. No, the word came out strangled. No, Vesper, you cannot. I know it is dangerous. I know what Rowena said about the curse feeding on love. But I cannot help. You do not understand. He turned away from her, his hands clenched at his sides. The curse does not just kill women who love me. It feeds on that love, grows stronger with it. And when it has fed enough, when the love is deep enough and mutual enough, he stopped, his breath coming in ragged gasps. It does not just kill them, it kills me too. Vesper felt the world tilt. What? Why do you think I have never let anyone close before this? Caius's voice cracked. Why I was so careful to keep every bride at a distance? Because the curse is designed to ensure I never find happiness. The moment I truly love someone, the moment that love is returned, it will destroy us both. But we have been different, Vesper said desperately. The warmth we share, the way the curse cannot drain me. You said yourself I was unlike the others. We were different while neither of us felt anything deep. His face was ashen now, frost spreading visibly across his chest, seeping through his shirt. But if you love me, if I love you back. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Vesper watched in horror as ice began to creep across his skin. His lips turned blue. His breath came in white clouds. No, she whispered. No, not yet. I only just told you. It cannot happen this fast. The curse has been waiting. One Caius gripped his chest, his legs buckling. Building. Every night we spent together, every touch, every moment of happiness. It was all feeding the curse, preparing for this moment. He fell to his knees, ice spreading fast now. And now that you have admitted it, now that the love is real and named, there is nothing to stop it. Then I take it back. Vesper dropped to her knees beside him, grasping his freezing hands. I do not love you. I feel nothing. I am still hollow. I am still empty. You cannot lie to a curse. His grip weakened, and I cannot lie to myself anymore. He looked at her, and despite the ice covering his face, his eyes were warm, alive, full of everything he had tried not to feel. I love you, Vesper. I have loved you since the moment you looked at me without fear. Since you survived that first night. Since you gave me hope that I might be more than a monster. The ice spread faster, creeping up his neck, across his face. His breath came in shallow, painful gasps. Vesper screamed, Help! Someone help! The king is dying! Guards burst through the door. Servants came running, but they all stopped short at the sight before them. The king, covered in frost, collapsed in his queen's arms, the curse finally claiming its price. And inside Vesper's womb, the child stirred. She felt it. A flutter of movement, a pulse of warmth that spread from her belly through her whole body, centering on the hollow mark. The baby was trying to protect them, but it was not strong enough. Not yet. There is no cure, the healer said, kneeling beside them. Her face was grave with the knowledge of 17 failures. I am sorry, Your Majesty. The curse has him. Without magic to counter it, he will be frozen completely within hours. Then find me magic. Vesper looked up, her face wet with tears she had not felt herself cry. Find me a witch. Find me anyone who can help. Magic is forbidden in this kingdom, Your Majesty. Has been for generations. I do not care, Vesper's voice was steel. Find someone. Now. They carried Caius to his chambers and laid him on the bed where 17 women had died and one had lived. The ice covered him now like armor, like a tomb. His eyes were closed, his breath barely visible, his skin translucent as glass. Vesper sat beside him, holding his frozen hand, feeling the child move restlessly in her belly. You have to fight, she whispered to him. For our baby, for the family we are building, you have to hold on. But Caius did not respond. The curse had him now, dragging him down into cold darkness. Rowena found Vesper there at midnight. There is a woman, she said quietly, in the northern woods beyond the border. They call her the Hollow Witch. She deals in curses, and they're unmaking. Vesper looked up, her eyes red from crying. The witch who made my seal? Yes, I can draw you a map. But Vesper, Rowena knelt beside her. You need to know something. When Father took me to her years ago, she said something. She said if your seal ever broke, if your magic ever emerged, it would be powerful enough to cure any curse. But only if you could control it. Then I will learn to control it. There is no time to learn. Rowena gripped her hand. Your baby is already breaking the seal from inside. That is why you are feeling emotions again. Why warmth is returning. The child has fire magic in its blood, inherited from mother's line, and it is burning through the seal little by little. Vesper's hand flew to her belly. Is the baby in danger? I do not know, but the witch might. Rowena pressed a folded map into her hands. Go, save your king, and when you come back, we will face whatever comes together. Come with me, Vesper said. I cannot. Someone needs to stay here, to watch over the king, to make sure the council does not try to seize power while he is helpless. Rowena squeezed her hand. But I will be here when you return, I promise. Vesper looked at Caius one last time, at his frozen face, his still chest, the ice that covered him like a death shroud. Then she stood, one hand on her belly where their child grew, and made a choice. I will save him, she said, or I will die trying. The journey north took 3 days of hard riding. Vesper traveled alone against the protests of guards and the frantic worry of advisors. But she could not afford to wait, could not afford to move slowly. Every hour that passed was an hour closer to Caius dying, an hour closer to her child losing a father it would never know. She rode through snow and ice, following Rowena's map into forests so thick they blocked out the sun. The trees here were ancient, twisted, their branches reaching toward each other like fingers trying to hold hands. The air smelled of old magic and older secrets. The baby moved constantly in her belly, as if it knew they were traveling toward something important, as if it was urging her forward. On the third day, she found the cottage. It sat in a clearing that should not have existed, surrounded by flowers that bloomed impossibly in the snow. Smoke rose from the chimney, warm and welcoming, but the door, when Vesper approached it, felt like the entrance to something that should not be crossed. She knocked anyway. The woman who answered was ancient. Her face was a landscape of wrinkles, her eyes milky with age, her hair white as the snow that never touched her doorstep. But her voice, when she spoke, was sharp as a blade. The Queen of Frostvale, she said. I wondered when you would come. You know who I am? Vesper asked. I know what you carry. The witch's blind eyes fixed on Vesper's chest, on the hollow mark hidden beneath her clothes. I put it there after all. And I know what grows in your womb, a child of fire and ice, breaking the seal I created, waking magic that should have slept forever. Vesper's blood ran cold. Bums. What? Come inside, child. The witch turned, her skirts sweeping across wooden floors. We have much to discuss, and not much time. The cottage interior was cluttered with herbs and bones, and artifacts Vesper could not identify. The witch settled into a chair by the fire and gestured for Vesper to sit. Your father came to me when you were 7 years old, the witch began without preamble. You had begun showing signs of magic. Strong magic. Fire and warmth and life itself bending to your will. You healed a dying bird, brought dead flowers back to bloom, made frost melt with just your touch. Vesper shook her head. That is impossible. I have never had magic. The hollow mark. The hollow mark took everything from you. That is what I designed it to do. The witch smiled grimly. Your father feared what you were becoming, feared the power growing inside you. He had watched your mother die from magic she could not control, watched it burn her from the inside over 5 years. When you began showing the same gifts, he panicked. So he paid you to seal my magic away. Vesper's voice was flat. He paid me to create a prison, a mark that would contain your power. Lock it away where it could never emerge. The witch leaned forward. But seals are strange things, child. They do not destroy what they contain. They only hide it, compress it, transform it into something else. Into the hollow, Vesper whispered. Into absence, into void, into a space where nothing should exist but everything is waiting. The witch's eyes gleamed. Your father thought he was protecting you, but he was creating something far more powerful than he understood. A vessel that could hold anything, contain anything, absorb anything. Like a curse, Vesper said slowly. Like a curse, the witch nodded. That is why the king's ice could not kill you. Your hollow mark absorbed it, drank it in like water, into dry earth. But there is another side to this gift. She reached out and pressed one gnarled finger to Vesper's chest, right over where the hollow mark pulsed. If the seal is broken, if your true power emerges, you could do more than survive his curse. You could cure it. Hope flared in Vesper's chest. Then break it. Tell me how. I will do anything. Only the one who commissioned the seal can break it. The witch sat back. Your father holds the key, a phoenix feather bound to my magic. Without it, the seal cannot be undone. Then I will get it from him. Vesper stood. I will ride back to the Thorn estate tonight and... Wait, the witch's voice stopped her. There is more you need to understand. Your father will not give you the key willingly. He has spent 17 years ensuring your power stayed buried. He would rather see you dead than unleashed. He is my father. He loves me. He loves you enough to destroy you to keep you safe. The witch's words were gentle but brutal. I have seen this story before. Men who love so much, they smother. Fathers who fear so deeply they harm. Vesper thought of her father lying in his bed, haunted by guilt. Of her mother dying slowly over 5 years. Of the hollow mark that had stolen 17 years of her life. If I get the key, she said quietly, if I break the seal and release my magic, what happens? Fire will pour out of you. The witch's voice was almost kind now. 17 years of suppressed magic, all released at once. It will be, well, uncontrollable. You could burn everything you touch, including the king. Then teach me to control it. There is no time. Your child is already breaking the seal from inside. That is why you are feeling emotions again. Why warmth is returning. The baby has fire magic in its blood, and it is burning through the seal little by little. The witch stood, moving to a shelf where jars of strange liquids glowed in the firelight. You have perhaps a week before the seal breaks on its own. When it does, without training, without preparation, the magic will explode. It will kill you, the child, and anyone near you. Vesper felt the child move in her belly, a strong kick, as if the baby understood they were talking about it. But if I get the key first, Vesper said slowly, if I break the seal deliberately, I can try to control it. The magic will be just as wild, just as dangerous. The witch pulled down a jar filled with silver liquid. But you will have the element of choice, of intention. And you will have this. She poured the liquid into the vial Rowena had given Vesper weeks ago. Your mother's amulet, the witch said, the one your sister gave you. When the seal breaks, this will bind my magic to hers, create a channel for the fire to flow through. It will not control the magic, but it will guide it, give it direction. Pour it over the amulet when the moment comes. Vesper clutched the vial. Will it be enough to save Caius? The witch was quiet for a long moment. Fire magic is life magic, child. Healing magic. Your mother could cure any curse, mend any wound, bring warmth to the coldest heart. You carry her gift, magnified by 17 years of compression. She touched Vesper's face gently. If anyone can cure the Ice King, it is you. But magic demands a price, always. Be prepared to pay it. I will pay anything. Even your own life? Vesper thought of Caius frozen in his bed, of their child growing in her belly, half curse and half hollow, of the family she had never thought she would have, now balanced on the edge of a blade. Even that, she said. The witch smiled. It was not a happy expression, but it held a certain grim approval. Then go get your key, child, and may your mother's fire burn bright enough to melt the ice. Vesper rode through the night. The Thorn estate loomed before her as dawn broke, its windows dark, its gates shut. She did not bother knocking. She rode straight through, her horse's hooves clattering on stone, servants scattering in surprise. She found her father in his chambers, exactly as Rowena had described, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, his face gaunt with guilt and sleeplessness. He turned his head when she entered. For a moment, just a moment, something like relief crossed his face. Vesper, he said, you are alive. No thanks to you. She stood at the foot of his bed, her hand resting on her swollen belly. I know everything, Father, about Mother, about the hollow mark, about the magic you stole from me. Aldrich closed his eyes. Rowena told you. And the hollow witch. The same witch you paid to kill, Mother slowly. The same witch you paid to destroy me. Her voice was steady, but underneath, fire simmered. I need the phoenix feather, the key to the seal. Give it to me. No, Assume. Caius is dying. Our child is dying inside me because the seal is breaking and I cannot control what is coming out. If you ever loved me, if you ever wanted to protect me, give me the key. I cannot. Aldrich sat up, his face drawn with old pain. I watched your mother burn from the inside for 5 years. 5 years of watching her grow weaker, watching the magic consume her. She screamed at night. Vesper. Screamed from the pain of power she could not control. His voice broke. I will not watch you die the same way. I am dying anyway. Vesper's shout echoed through the chamber. The seal is breaking, whether you help me or not. But if I break it myself, if I have training and intention and choice, I might survive. We might survive. You will not. Aldrich stood, swaying slightly. The moment that magic is released, it will burn you alive. Better the seal hold a little longer. Better you live hollow than die screaming. You do not get to make that choice for me anymore. Vesper's hand moved to her stomach. I am not your little girl. I am a queen, a wife, a mother, and I will save my family even if it means burning. They stared at each other across the room. Father and daughter, broken by the same fear, divided by the same love. Then Aldrich's shoulders slumped. He turned to a locked box on his desk, opened it with shaking hands, and pulled out a single feather. It glowed like captured flame, red and gold and orange, pulsing with warmth that filled the cold room. This is all that remains of your mother's magic, Aldrich said quietly. He held it out to Vesper. She gave it to me the day before she died. Made me promise to use it to protect you if you ever showed her gifts. His hand trembled. I thought I was keeping that promise by sealing you. But I was wrong, was I not? I was always wrong. Vesper took the feather. The moment her fingers touched it, warmth flooded her palm, spread up her arm, centered on the hollow mark over her heart. The seal recognized its key. Father, she said softly, I forgive you. Aldrich's face crumpled. You should not. But I do. She crossed to him, placed one hand on his weathered cheek. You loved wrongly, but you loved. And I am learning that love, even broken love, is better than the hollow. She kissed his forehead. Then she turned and walked out of the room, the phoenix feather clutched in her hand, warmth spreading through her body with each step. Behind her, her father wept for the daughter he had tried to protect by destroying her, and the daughter who had somehow found the strength to forgive him anyway. Vesper rode back to Winterbourne Castle as if demons chased her. 3 days out, 3 days back, 6 days total. Caius had been frozen for 9 days when she finally burst through the castle gates, her horse lathered with sweat, the phoenix feather burning in her pocket. Rowena met her at the entrance, her face pale. He is still alive, Rowena said. Barely. The healers say he has perhaps hours left. Take me to him. They ran through corridors, upstairs, to the chambers where Caius lay entombed in ice. Vesper burst through the door and stopped, her hand flying to her mouth. The ice had spread. It covered the entire bed now, frost creeping up the walls, across the ceiling. And at the center, barely visible beneath layers of crystalline cold, lay Caius. He looked like a statue carved from winter itself, his skin translucent, his lips blue, his chest so still she could not tell if he was breathing. Vesper crossed to the bed, pressed her hands against the ice covering him. I am here, she whispered. I found the key. I am going to save you. She pulled the phoenix feather from her pocket, pulled her mother's amulet from around her neck, and remembered the witch's words. Pour the vial over the amulet. It will create a channel, guide the fire. But first she had to break the seal. Vesper closed her fist around the phoenix feather and squeezed. The feather shattered like glass, and fire erupted from Vesper's chest. She screamed as 17 years of suppressed magic poured out of her hollow mark. Flames danced along her skin, not burning her, but burning everything else. The bed caught fire. The walls blackened. Servants screamed and fled, but Rowena stayed. She rushed forward, grabbed the vial, and poured it over the amulet still clutched in Vesper's other hand. Silver liquid mixed with ancient magic. The amulet flared bright, and suddenly the wildfire had direction. Vesper felt it. The flames still poured from her, uncontrollable and fierce, but now they had a purpose, a target, a destination. She placed her hands on the ice covering Caius's chest and let the fire flow. "Live," she commanded. "Live for me. Live for our child. Live." The ice began to melt, but the curse fought back. It was old, this curse, ancient and hungry and fed on generations of broken hearts. It did not want to let go. Vesper poured more fire into the ice, more magic, more of herself. Inside her womb, the child kicked, hard. And suddenly, Vesper felt another source of magic join hers. Small, new, but impossibly powerful. The baby was helping her. Fire and ice met in the space over Caius's heart. The curse screamed, a sound only Vesper could hear. And then, finally, it shattered. Ice exploded into water. Water evaporated to steam. Steam cleared to reveal Caius lying still and pale, and finally free. Vesper collapsed beside him, the fire dying, her magic spent. Behind her, Rowena caught her before she fell. "Is he alive?" Vesper whispered. Rowena pressed her fingers to Caius's throat, waited, then smiled through her tears. "He is alive." Caius's eyes opened, silver, not gray, warm, not cold. He looked at Vesper, at his wife who had ridden through ice and fire to save him, and managed a weak smile. "You came back," he said. "Always," Vesper promised. "I will always come back." She leaned down and kissed him. His lips were warm. The curse was broken. The castle woke slowly to a new world. For 3 days after the curse broke, Caius slept. Not the frozen stillness of a man dying, but true sleep, deep and healing and dreamless. His chest rose and fell with steady breaths. His skin held color. His lips remained warm. Vesper did not leave his side. She sat in a chair pulled close to the bed, one hand resting on her swollen belly where their child grew strong and active, the other holding Caius's hand. She watched him breathe, watched color return to his cheeks hour by hour, watched the last traces of frost melt from the window frames and corners of the room. The curse was truly gone. Healers came and went, marveling at what they found. A living king where a frozen corpse should have been. A queen who had wielded fire magic powerful enough to melt 3 generations of ice. And between them, the promise of an heir who carried both gifts in its blood. On the 3rd day, just as dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, Caius's eyes opened. He turned his head slowly as if testing whether his body would obey him. His gaze found Vesper, and something in his expression softened. "You are still here," he said. His voice was rough from disuse but warm, so wonderfully warm. "Where else would I be?" Vesper squeezed his hand. "I thought perhaps I dreamed you." He tried to sit up, winced, settled back against the pillows. Dreamed the fire, dreamed being saved, dreamed that impossible warmth flowing into me. It was real. Vesper brought his hand to her lips, kissed his knuckles gently. "All of it was real. The curse is broken, Caius. You are free." He stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, carefully, as if afraid he might shatter the moment, he reached up and touched her face. His fingers were warm against her cheek. "Alive. Human. I can feel you," he whispered. "Without cold, without pain, without fear that I am draining your life away." His voice cracked. "For the first time in 18 years, I can touch someone and feel only warmth." Vesper turned her face into his palm. "How do you feel?" "Like I have been asleep for a very long time." He sat up properly now, testing his strength. "Like I am waking up in a body I do not quite remember. Everything feels different. The air is warmer. The light is brighter. Even my own heartbeat sounds louder." He looked at his hands, turning them over as if seeing them for the first time. "Is this what it feels like to be normal? To be uncursed?" "I do not know what normal feels like," Vesper admitted, "but I know what freedom feels like. And I think we have both found it." Caius pulled her close, careful of her pregnant belly, and held her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. His face pressed into her hair, his breath warm against her neck. "Thank you," he whispered, "for riding into darkness to save me, for breaking your own curse to free me from mine, for refusing to let me die alone." "We saved each other," Vesper said softly. "That is what love does." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, feeling the warmth of 2 bodies that had both been frozen in different ways and were finally thawing. The council met 5 days after the curse broke. They gathered in the Great Hall, these nobles and advisors who had watched 17 funerals and never expected to see a living queen crowned. They looked at Vesper with a mixture of awe and fear, as if she were something holy and terrible at once. The woman who had burned away a curse that had lasted 3 generations. The woman who carried the heir to a kingdom that had thought itself doomed. The woman whose hollow mark had transformed into something that glowed faintly through the fabric of her gown, visible when the light hit it right. Not empty anymore, not a void, but a phoenix rising from ashes, wings spread wide, carrying fire in its talons. Chaos stood before his council, and for the first time in his reign, he stood without cold radiating from his skin. The advisors noticed. They leaned forward slightly, as if drawn by the warmth they had never felt from their king before. "The curse is broken," Chaos announced. His voice carried through the hall, strong and clear. "After 3 generations, after 17 deaths, after years of living as monsters in our own skin, my family is finally free." He turned to Vesper, held out his hand. "Because of my queen." Vesper took his hand and stood beside him. She could feel the council's eyes on her belly, on the child that moved restlessly inside her. "There will be changes," Chaos continued. "Magic has been forbidden in this kingdom since my great-grandfather's time, since the curse began. But magic is not evil. Fear is evil. Ignorance is evil. Magic is simply power, and power can heal as easily as it harms." He looked at each advisor in turn. "I am lifting the ban on magic, effective immediately. Witches and mages who have hidden for generations may practice openly. Those with healing gifts may use them to help our people, and those who abuse their power will answer to me." The hall erupted in whispers, some approving, some shocked, some clearly afraid. An older advisor stood, his face grave. "Your Majesty, with respect, magic brought the curse upon your family. How can you be certain it will not bring another?" "Because I have learned the difference between magic and cruelty," Chaos said quietly. "My great-grandfather was not cursed for having a witch in his kingdom. He was cursed for murdering her when she refused to be his weapon. The curse was not about magic. It was about accountability." He squeezed Vesper's hand. "And it was broken by magic, by love, by a woman who had every reason to let me die and chose to save me instead." He turned to address the full council. "We will build a new kingdom, one that honors both strength and gentleness. One that remembers what we have lost and protects what we have gained. One that gives our children a world where they do not have to hide what they are." The council voted, not unanimously, not without argument, but in the end, they voted to approve. Magic would be legal in Frostfall for the first time in 3 generations. And watching from the gallery, hidden in the shadows where she had slipped in to witness this moment, Rowena wept with relief. Vesper found her sister in the castle gardens that evening. Rowena sat on a stone bench beneath a tree, just beginning to bud, her face turned up to catch the last rays of sunlight. She looked peaceful, more peaceful than Vesper had seen her in years. "You heard the council's decision," Vesper said, settling carefully beside her. "I did." Rowena smiled. "You are changing the world, little sister." "We are changing the world," Vesper corrected. "None of this would have been possible without you. You told me the truth about Mother. You gave me the amulet. You helped me channel the fire when it would have burned everything." She took Rowena's hand. "You saved me as much as I saved Caius." Rowena's eyes glistened. "I spent so many years feeling guilty, for not protecting you from Father, for not stopping him when he sealed your magic, for being the perfect daughter while you suffered." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I should have fought harder for you." "You fought exactly as hard as you could," Vesper said gently. "You were a child too, caught between a father who loved wrongly and a sister he was destroying to protect. There is no guilt in that, only tragedy." "Do you really forgive him?" Rowena asked, "after everything he did?" Vesper thought about this, about her father lying in his bed, haunted by ghosts, about her mother dying slowly over 5 years, about the hollow mark that had stolen 17 years of feeling from her life. "I am learning to," she said finally. "Forgiveness is not about excusing what was done. It is about releasing the hold it has over you, about choosing to move forward instead of remaining frozen in the past." She touched the place where the phoenix mark glowed beneath her dress. "I was hollow for so long. I do not want to fill that space with bitterness." Rowena leaned her head on Vesper's shoulder. "You are stronger than I ever was." "No," Vesper said. "I am just tired of being cold." They sat together as the sun set, 2 sisters who had survived different kinds of curses and come out the other side still holding hands. The baby came 6 weeks early, on a night when spring rain drummed against the castle windows and thunder rolled across distant hills. Vesper's water broke. The labor was long, difficult. Fire magic burned through her with each contraction, wild and uncontrolled, responding to her pain. Caius held her hand through it all, his face pale with worry, his warmth the only thing that kept her grounded. "The baby is struggling," the head healer said quietly. "The magic is too strong. It is burning through the birthing passage." "Then help her," Caius demanded. "Do something." "There is nothing we can do, Your Majesty. This is beyond our skill." Vesper gripped Caius's hand harder as another contraction seized her. Fire bloomed beneath her skin, visible through her sweat-slicked body. The baby was trying to be born, but its own magic was fighting the process. "Rowena," Vesper gasped. "Get Rowena." Her sister came running, one look at Vesper's face, at the fire dancing beneath her skin, and Rowena understood. "The baby has your magic," Rowena said. "It is trying to protect itself by burning. You need to calm it, soothe it, let it know it is safe to be born." "How?" Vesper's voice was ragged with pain, the way Mother would have. Rowena pressed her hands over Vesper's belly. "Sing to it." "I do not remember her songs." "Then make your own." Vesper closed her eyes, reached deep inside herself to where the baby struggled, caught between two worlds, afraid to leave the safety of the womb. And she sang. Not words, just sound. A melody that came from somewhere deeper than memory, perhaps from her mother's blood, perhaps from the fire magic that had finally been freed, perhaps from love itself. The fire beneath her skin calmed, flickered, settled into a warm glow. The baby stopped fighting, and an hour later, as dawn broke over the castle, a cry pierced the air. The healer lifted a small, squirming bundle. "A daughter, Your Majesty, healthy and strong." Vesper reached for her child with shaking hands. The baby settled against her chest, tiny fists waving, eyes scrunched shut against the sudden brightness of the world. And in that moment of first contact, skin to skin, heart to heart, Vesper felt something extraordinary happen. The phoenix mark over her own heart pulsed once, warm and bright, and a matching mark appeared on the baby's chest, small and faint, barely visible against new skin, but unmistakably there. A tiny phoenix, wings just beginning to spread. "She carries the magic," Rowena breathed. "Both of them, fire and ice, perfectly balanced." Caius looked at his daughter with wonder written across his face. "What will we call her?" Vesper thought of fire, of transformation, of the small glowing embers that remained after a great blaze had passed. "Ember," she said. "Her name is Ember." Lord Aldrich arrived at the castle when Ember was 3 weeks old. Vesper had sent word of the birth, but she had not invited him, had not asked him to come. Part of her had not expected him to make the journey. But when the guards announced his arrival, when they said he had traveled for days to reach them, she found herself curious despite everything. She met him in the small receiving room, Ember cradled in her arms, Caius standing protective at her side. Her father had aged, not just in the months since she had last seen him, but in some fundamental way that went beyond years. His hair was completely white now, his face deeply lined. His hands trembled slightly as he removed his traveling cloak. He stopped when he saw the baby, his breath caught. "She has as old as eyes," he whispered. "Yes," Vesper said, amber, like fire reflected in glass. Aldrich took a hesitant step forward. Another. Then he fell to his knees before them, this man who had once stood so proud and certain, now brought low by regret. "I do not deserve to meet her," he said. "I do not deserve your forgiveness or your time or even this moment. But I needed to see her, to know that some part of his soul lives on." His voice broke. "To know that I did not destroy everything." Vesper looked down at her father. At this broken man who had loved wrongly and destroyed much and was trying, however late, to make amends. She thought about what she had told Rowena, about forgiveness not being about excusing but about releasing. "Her name is Ember," Vesper said quietly. "Would you like to hold your granddaughter?" Aldrich looked up with shock written across his face. I do not deserve." "No," Vesper agreed, "you do not. But she deserves to know her grandfather, and I am tired of punishing people with absence." She knelt, careful of the baby, and placed Ember gently in her father's arms. Aldrich held the child as if she were made of spun glass. Tears ran unchecked down his weathered cheeks. His finger traced the tiny phoenix mark on Ember's chest, and his breath hitched. "She has your magic," he said. "The magic I tried to steal from you." "She has Mother's magic," Vesper corrected, "passed down through blood and bone and love that could not be sealed away forever." She touched her father's shoulder. "And she will grow up knowing what she is, using her gifts freely, never afraid, never hollow. Because of you." Aldrich looked at her, and his eyes held more emotion than Vesper had seen in them since childhood. Because you broke the seal I created. Because you refused to let fear win. Because you gave me the key, Vesper said. In the end, when it mattered, you chose to help me instead of continuing to cage me. That is worth something. They sat together in silence for a while. 3 generations. The man who had destroyed, the woman who had survived, and the child who represented hope for something better. Finally, Aldrich spoke again. I want to make amends. I know I cannot undo what I did, but I want to try to balance the scales somehow. How? Caius asked. His voice was not warm, but not hostile either. Cautious. I will fund a school, Aldrich said, in Isolde's name, a place where people with magic can learn to control their gifts. Where children like Vesper once was do not have to fear their own power. He looked at Ember, where this little one can grow up surrounded by others like her, learning from teachers who understand. Vesper felt something in her chest loosen, not forgiveness, not quite, but the first steps toward it. That would honor Mother's memory, she said quietly. Then I will do it. Aldrich gently returned Ember to Vesper's arms. I cannot give you back the years I stole, but I can try to ensure no other child loses what you lost. He stood, bowed to them both, and left. Vesper watched him go, this man who had broken her and was trying to repair the world he had damaged. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was something, and sometimes something was where healing began. The months that followed brought changes that rippled through the kingdom like stones thrown into still water. Aldrich kept his word. Within 6 months, the Isolde Thorn Academy for Magical Arts opened its doors in the capital. Its halls were filled with students of all ages who had hidden their gifts for years. Healers who had pretended to be herbalists. Fire mages who had claimed their warmth came from hearthstones. Ice workers who had said they were simply good at preserving food. They came out of the shadows, learned to use their power for good, taught the next generation that magic was a gift, not a curse. Rowena took a position as one of the Academy's first instructors. She taught control, precision, how to channel magic through emotion without being consumed by it. The students loved her. They called her the Gentle Flame, for the way she could make even wild magic settle and listen. The kingdom itself began to thaw, not just from the literal breaking of the ice curse, but from something deeper. Fear had kept people locked in place for generations. Now, slowly, that fear was melting away. And in the castle, Ember grew. She was a remarkable child from the beginning. At 3 months, she laughed at snowflakes melting on her nose, and the snow turned to steam before it touched her skin. At 6 months, she crawled toward the fireplace and stuck her hand directly into the flames, causing Vesper's heart to stop until she realized the fire was not burning her daughter, it was dancing with her. At 9 months, Ember discovered she could make frost appear on her father's hands when he held her, then melted away with a giggle. The hot and cold game became her favorite, and Caius played along with endless patience, marveling at this child who carried both sides of a curse transformed into balance. At 12 months, Ember took her first steps, and that was when the true magic began to show. The gardens had been Vesper's idea. After months of being confined to the castle through winter, she wanted space for Ember to explore. Wanted her daughter to know the feel of earth beneath bare feet, the smell of growing things, the sight of butterflies dancing between flowers. The gardeners had worked miracles. They planted early bloomers that could survive the last frost, built paths wide enough for a wobbly toddler to navigate, created spaces where a child could safely discover the world. On a bright afternoon in late spring, with Caius holding one of Ember's hands and Vesper holding the other, they brought their daughter to the gardens for the first time. Ember's eyes went wide. She pulled free from her parents' hands and toddled forward on unsteady legs, her attention caught by a butterfly with wings the color of autumn leaves. Butter, she said, which was her word for anything that flew. She reached for it with chubby fingers. The butterfly landed on her palm and burst into flames. Vesper gasped. Caius started forward. But before either could react, they realized the butterfly was not burning. It was transforming. The ordinary brown wings turned to fire, orange and red and gold, flickering with heat but not consuming. The butterfly lifted off Ember's hand, now a creature made of living flame, and danced through the air. Ember squealed with delight and clapped. More butter! She turned to a flower, touched it with one finger. The flower burst into flames and reformed as a blossom made of ice crystal, perfectly preserved, perfectly beautiful. Then Ember spotted a small bird pecking at seeds near the path. She toddled toward it, arms outstretched. Ember, no, Vesper called, but it was too late. The bird hopped onto Ember's offered hand. And for a moment, nothing happened. Then the bird began to glow, soft at first, then brighter. Its feathers shimmered with both fire and frost, red and blue and white all at once. When it flew away, it left trails of steam in the air behind it, singing a song that sounded like wind chimes and crackling flames mixed together. Ember watched it go with wonder on her small face. Then she turned to her parents and smiled, proud of herself. "I made butter pretty," she announced. Caius dropped to his knees, pulling his daughter into his arms. He was laughing and crying at the same time, his face pressed into her dark hair. "Yes, little flame," he said. "You made the world beautiful." Vesper knelt beside them, wrapping her arms around both her husband and her daughter, around this family that should never have existed, this love that had survived curses and ice and 17 years of hollow emptiness. "She has both gifts," Vesper said softly, "perfectly balanced, fire and ice, working together instead of fighting." "The curse transformed," Caius agreed. He looked at Vesper over their daughter's head. "Because we transformed, because we refused to let fear and death be the end of the story." Ember wiggled free from their embrace and toddled toward another butterfly. This one she left alone, content to watch it dance between flowers, learning already that sometimes magic was best when simply observed. Vesper stood, Caius's hand finding hers automatically. They watched their daughter explore, creating small miracles with every touch, and knew that they had done more than break a curse. They had rewritten the future. 18 months after Ember's birth, the castle held a celebration. It was officially to mark the second anniversary of Caius and Vesper's wedding. But really, it was to celebrate everything that had changed. The curse broken, the kingdom healing, magic restored, a family thriving where 17 funerals had once been. The great hall was filled with nobles and commoners alike. Students from the Isolde Thorn Academy performed demonstrations of controlled magic. Rowena gave a speech about her sister's courage. Lord Aldrich, looking older but lighter somehow, presented the school's first-year report with pride. And at the center of it all, Caius and Vesper danced. It was the first time they had danced together since their wedding night. Then they had been strangers bound by duty and desperation. Now they moved as one, comfortable in each other's presence, knowing without words what the other needed. "Do you remember what you told me?" Caius asked as they spun slowly. "The night we met, when I asked why you were not afraid." "I said I did not believe you wanted to kill them," Vesper replied. "And you were right." He pulled her closer. "I never wanted any of it. The curse, the deaths, the loneliness. I was a prisoner of my own bloodline." "We both were," Vesper said. "Me and my hollow mark, you and your ice. But we found each other, and we found a way out." More than that, Caius glanced to where Ember sat with Rowena, carefully creating tiny frost flowers in her aunt's palm. "We found a way forward, a future where our daughter will never know the prisons we lived in." The music swelled, other couples joined them on the floor. But Vesper only had eyes for her husband, this man who had been a cursed king and was now simply Caius, her partner, her love, her home. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "What is it?" "I am with child again." Caius stopped dancing, his eyes went wide. "Truly?" "The healer confirmed it this morning," Vesper smiled. "Ember will have a sibling, another child born free of curses, another future unburdened by the past." Caius lifted her off her feet and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. When he set her down, he kissed her thoroughly, not caring that the entire court was watching. "You continue to give me miracles," he said against her lips. "We give them to each other," Vesper corrected. That night, after the celebration ended and the castle grew quiet, Vesper found herself in the gardens one last time. She walked the path slowly, one hand resting on her belly where new life grew, the other touching flowers and leaves. The moon was full, painting everything in silver light. The air smelled of growing things and possibility. She stopped at a bench beneath a flowering tree and sat, letting the quiet settle over her. Behind her, footsteps approached on the path. She knew them without looking, knew the rhythm of that walk, the warmth that preceded him. Caius sat beside her on the bench, his arm coming around her shoulders, pulling her close. "I thought I would find you here," he said. "I needed a moment of quiet, to think, to feel grateful." "What are you grateful for?" Vesper leaned into him, let her head rest on his shoulder. "Everything. You, Ember, this new child growing inside me, the kingdom healing, my sister happy, my father trying to make amends, magic no longer feared." She paused, being able to feel all of it instead of being hollow. Caius kissed the top of her head. "I am grateful for you, for the evening star who refused to be extinguished, For the woman who looked at a monster and saw only a man who needed saving. You were never a monster. I was what I needed to be to survive. We both were. He took her hand, laced their fingers together. But we do not have to be those people anymore. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. The night grew deeper. Somewhere in the castle, Ember dreamed of butterflies made of fire. Rowena wrote lesson plans for her students. Lord Aldrich read letters from grateful parents whose children could finally learn their gifts. The world turned, changed, grew, and at the center of it all, two people who had survived the unsurvivable sat together, warm and alive and free. They will tell our story, Vesper said eventually. Years from now, centuries perhaps. They will tell of the cursed king and the hollow bride, of 17 deaths and one survival, of fire and ice. What will they say? Caius asked. Vesper smiled. They will say that no woman lasted a night with the AlphaKing, that 17 tried and 17 died, that love was poison and touch was death and happiness was impossible. And then they will say that the 18th bride was different, that she did not just last a night. Vesper turned to look at him, at this man who had been her salvation and whom she had saved in return. They will say she fell asleep in the AlphaKing's arms, and when she woke, she was whole. Is that the end of the story? Caius asked softly. No, Vesper said. She placed his hand on her belly, over the place where new life grew, over the phoenix mark that pulsed with warmth and magic and the promise of futures unburdened by the past. That is where the story truly begins. The moon rose higher, the stars wheeled overhead, and in the gardens of Winterbourne Castle, a cursed king and a hollow bride sat together in the peace they had created, no longer frozen, no longer empty, but filled with the warm, living, glorious abundance of love that had survived everything death could throw at it. They had broken the curse. They had healed the hollow. And they had proven once and for all that even the coldest winter eventually yields to spring. In the distance, a nightingale began to sing. Vesper closed her eyes and listened, not to the bird, but to the sound of her own heart beating, full and warm and finally free. No woman lasted a night with him, the stories would say. But one woman did. One woman fell asleep in his arms and woke up whole. And from that night forward, love was no longer poison. It was the cure.